When I meet other watch enthusiasts or speak to other watch enthusiasts, there's one question that I do like to ask. And it's not, what is your grail watch, or what is your most worn watch, or even what is your favorite watch? The one question that I really like to ask is, what is your most important watch in your collection and why? Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches. And this is my favorite question to ask because the answers tend to be thought out, varied in regards to what watches are spoken about, and the reasoning behind why they are important are so different. It's nice to get this collection of different watches and reasoning behind why they are so important. So I intend today to answer the question for myself. What is the most important watch in my collection and why? But before I answer that question for you, I thought I'd ask some other watch enthusiasts. I thought I'd reach out to some other creators out there that love watches and ask them this hard question. And you are going to recognize some of these faces. I am absolutely sure of that. Some of them perhaps you may not. But I'm going to leave links to all of their sites or their YouTube channels or their podcasts in the description of this video if you want to check them out in a little bit more detail and follow their creations. These are guys and girls that I follow and that I enjoy watching, so maybe you will as well. And the first you are definitely going to recognize, I have no doubt, and it is Jody from Just One More Watch. Somebody who I really enjoy watching and somebody who is a huge influence on me in regards to the watches that I'm buying and this particular channel. I don't actually think I would have started this channel if it wasn't for Jody, because watching his channel gave me that inspiration or that thought that, wow, this is not just watching reviews, this is entertainment, and maybe I could give that a go. But when I thought about this question and Jody, and knowing the watches that are in Jody's collection, I thought about 3 watches that he might choose. So Jody, what is the most important watch in your collection?
Hello James and James's viewers, how are you doing? This is Jody from the Just One More Watch channel. Thank you very much for having me, James. Thank you for inviting me onto your video to answer the question, what is the most important watch in your collection and why? But I'm sorry, James, I don't think I can answer that question. I have been thinking about it for weeks and I honestly don't think I can. I could tell you what the most expensive watch in my collection was. I could tell you the watch that I'd worn the most or the watch that I'd owned the longest. But I honestly cannot tell you which watch is the most important. But I can tell you why I can't tell you, if you see what I mean. For example, is my most important watch my grandfather's old watch? You know, he died a long time ago, but it's great to have this little piece of him still in my possession, in my collection. Or what about this 1980s Omega that used to be my father's, but he gave me in the early 90s? I've now owned it therefore for over 30 years. Or what about the watch I wore almost every day for a decade from 2000 to 2010 when it finally cried enough and died? Or what about the first watch I ever remember owning as a kid, this little Casio? Not specifically this one, but one like it. Or what about the watch my wife gave me the day we got engaged? Surely the most important. If my wife's watching this video, it definitely is the most important. Or what about the watch I bought myself when I finished my studies a couple of years ago? A huge life moment for me. Is that therefore the most important watch I own? Do you see what I mean? I just cannot decide. They are all important and I would hate to have to pick one over all of the others. So I'm not going to. Sorry. Thanks again, James. All the best.
So out of those 6 watches, 3 were actually the 3 that I was thinking of. So was I half right? Maybe, but there's one person that I wanted to ask that I had no idea which watch he would choose, and it's because his collection is massive, and that is Mark from Long Island Watches. So Mark, in that very large collection that you have, what is your most important watch, and why is it your most important watch?
Hi, this is Mark from LongIslandWatch.com. Thank you, James, for asking me this question, allowing me to be in the video. The most important watch in my collection would undoubtedly be my dad's mid-80s two-tone Datejust with the champagne tapestry dial. My dad and I shared a lot of things, and since he passed about 10 years ago, I realized more and more of the things we had in common. But entrepreneurship, number one, he was a small business owner, so certainly the impetus behind me launching and starting my own store and then my own brand And he was a lover of wristwatches. This is the watch that I remember him wearing in the hardware store that he owned when I would go to work with him on Saturdays or during the summers. This is the watch I remember him wearing or fiddling with at night before bed. He would set it and wind it and unscrew the crown, wind it, change the time, screw it back down. And these are the memories I have of him. He had a number of wristwatches, about half a dozen or so, a couple of Concords, the Rolex, and a few others, but this is certainly the one that got the most wrist time for him. I take it out special occasions. This would be one of those occasions. But in my own personal collection of over 200 pieces, or somewhere around there, some crazy number, I have watches costing far more, and I have watches costing far less, but this would be the one that is the most important to me. Thank you again.
What a great watch to hold such importance in such a large collection. And having that story behind it just makes it even better. And that emotional connection that Mark has with that watch becomes a bit of a theme, that connection with a watch. Because an important watch generally also means there is some sort of connection to the watch, just like Parker has with the watch that he's going to show you shortly. Now, if you don't recognize his face, there's a pretty good reason for that, because he is one half of Overtime, a podcast dedicated directly and only to watches. And if you don't listen to podcasts, well, this one is definitely worth listening to. It is my favorite watch-related podcast. So Parker, what is your most important watch in your collection and why?
Thanks, James, for having me on this video. The most important watch in my collection is the Seiko SPB 143 dive watch. Now, why is this watch so important to me? I received this watch from my wife, my best friend, and my family for my 30th birthday. It means a lot to me. It's quite a significant piece in my collection, as it's something that I will never forget, a gift from the people that mean the most to me. But not only is this a sentimental piece, it also means a lot to me as a collector. I'm a big Seiko watch fan, and I love their design, whether that be a dive watch like the SPB 143 or their dress watches. They have such a long history and such great design. And this watch is a bit of an amalgamation of all of this. And every time I have it on my wrist, it represents not only my emotional side, but it also represents why I collect. So thank you for having me, James. Cheers.
I have the exact same connection with a watch that is in my collection, the same reasoning as Parker has with that Seiko. And I understand that asking this question is sometimes difficult because we have different reasonings why one watch is important and why another watch is important. And there is another question that is hard to answer, a question that Bianca from the 3 Watch Collectors channel asked me a number of months ago. She asked me, and her whole channel is based around picking 3 watches out of your collection that is your 3-watch collection. And it's difficult to answer that question. Out of all my watches in my collection, I had to choose only 3. And because she asked me a difficult question, I thought I would ask her this particular hard question too.
Hello my friends, I'm Bianca, the Ticking Time Blonde from the 3 Watch Collection channel. Thank you James for including me on your project. So to me guys, the most important watch in my collection would have to be my Tudor Back Bay 58. This was my first significant purchase and my first dive into going down the rabbit hole, so to speak. It is a larger watch, 39mm, and does wear quite well on my smaller wrist, but in saying that, I love the way that it makes me feel. Most collectors have all different concepts when collecting their watches. It could be independent, it could be the brand, and it could also be the movement. When I collect watches, it's how it makes me feel when I put it on. So when wearing this watch, I love the look of it. It has a very unique concept design of being modern and vintage. What else I love about this watch? Obviously, I do have a running theme with pink and diamonds. So this originally did come on a darker strap, so I was able to pair it with a light pink, which is something that is quite unique to me. And what also goes great with the pink is the rose on the crown. I find that simply gorgeous. I don't know where watch collecting will take me in the future, but in saying that, my Tudor Black Bay 58 will always be that watch will hold a special place in my heart.
Now, I thought that would be her choice because when I did meet her, she spoke a lot about that specific watch, and I completely understand why she likes that specific watch because I have a Tudor Black Bay 58 Blue as well, and it is an incredible watch. But one person that I had no idea what he would pick and why is the next guest.
Hello James, I hope you're doing wonderfully. So, the question you asked about the most important watch in my collection is a really tough one that really gave me some trouble to answer it actually. So, right now what I would consider to be the most important piece in my collection would be my Saint Martin SN0144 Submariner Homage. And why do I say that? Because that was the first watch I had been collecting for 3 or 4 years up to then, but it was my first watch that actually made me realize that Chinese watchmaking could be really, really good, even though it was a homage. But still, I do believe that that is maybe, at least for the channel, the most important watch up to now. That's it for me. Thank you very much. Have a lovely holiday. All the best to you and to your subscribers and viewers. Goodbye.
I completely understand why he's chosen this Saint Martin. It's a great watch, but it's more about the reasoning behind why it is so important, that it is a key watch in his watch collecting journey. And I have the same feeling about a number of watches in my collection. Before we get to our next guest, do you mind just clicking on that subscribe button if you have not already subscribed to my channel? I love making videos. I love making videos like this involving other creators, but it really makes a big difference to me if you're watching this and you're not a subscriber, if you just choose to hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much. And the next guest I have is also one of my favorite channels, John over in Scotland, and I was a little bit unsure of which watch he would pick. So John, what is your most important watch in your collection and why?
Recently, James asked me what my most important watch is and why. I thought it might be a difficult topic to take on, as I handle so many watches, but it's really not. For the longest time, I subscribed to the idea that there must be a perfect watch for everyone, but now I am buried deep in the bowels of this hobby, I have to own up and admit it simply isn't true. Humans are flawed, which means that nothing will ever truly satisfy us, but we can get close. I thought I'd found the best all-rounder in the Atticus Pelion 18 months ago, but deep down it was just too large. By a millimetre. Talk about picky, but since purchasing the Clemens Monroe earlier this year, I've found myself wearing it more and more. For me, it ticks most of the must-have boxes. In fact, it ticks them all. It's just my subconscious telling me there might be something better. There might well be, but I'm not going to let this one go. It's from the UK and it's tested in the Highlands, and that is important to me. But I love its design. It's understated and it's not a clawmage. The finishing is beautifully done, and it is simply the most comfortable watch I've ever worn. The on-the-fly adjustable clasp sees to that. It also leaves me asking, how did we ever do without these clasps? This watch is also very versatile, and it can be worn for just about anything. If I need to go formal, then switching out the strap is a breeze with the quick release system on the bracelet. The more I wear it, the more I bond with it. The more I bond with it, the more I want to wear it. Sometimes simplifying can be satisfying, and this watch is now a trusted companion, so much so that I've considered selling everything just for this watch. Will that ever happen? Probably not, but only time will tell.
I love that watch. That is a fantastic choice, and in fact, when I saw John's video about that watch, well, that watch went straight onto my own personal watch wish list. And this is a bit of a common theme. I like watching watch videos as well as creating them myself. And often I am heavily influenced by those creators, the creators that I'm featuring today, and watches end up on my wish list. But not just the watches are part of the influence to me. It is the videos that people are making. I am influenced by the people that I am watching. And I'm also shown a little bit of perhaps difference in channels that I then try to incorporate a little bit in mine. But there's one thing that I've struggled to incorporate into my channel because perhaps I just lack the courage. Unlike Travis, who does a lot of live streams on his channel. And that takes a lot of courage and a lot of talking. And it's not something that I'm quite ready to do, but Travis does it so well.
Okay, James, you wanted to know what was the most important watch for me in 2024. That's easy. Glycine Airman. Take a good look at that. All right, so this watch has a 24-hour dial, GMT function. As you can see, that serves as a locking mechanism for the bezel to tell time in a different zone, right? Now, what makes this important to me is not just its function, but this was actually utilized by Vietnam pilots, which I happened to, when I was in the military, I worked with a veteran from Vietnam, and he actually wore this watch, this particular setup right here. Now, being a veteran myself, I feel like I'm attached to the era, and knowing what I've done for my country, served and whatnot, this watch right here is more than important. Man, this just gives me a sense of pride, gives me a sense of being connected to a league of gentlemen and women as well that have served and sacrificed, and there's so much that goes along with it. With that said, I appreciate the opportunity to share with you guys and with your audience my most important watch for 2024. Now, James, you the man, you know it, and I can't wait to see what you got coming for 2025. Y'all be blessed.
I really love that glycine and glycine as a brand. I don't think they actually get enough attention. I've owned two previously and they've both been fantastic watches. But what I do like about that one is the story that he has attached to it. Experiences in his past, his service in the past, people in his past, and he's linked that through a watch. And it is something that I certainly do too, and it really elevates a watch in my own collection. And just as Travis has challenged my sort of courage about making certain videos, there's somebody that has challenged the sizing and style of watches in my collection too, and that is Norman from Killing Time with Norman. Norman features some amazing watches, and he certainly features the watches that he loves, and they often tend to be smaller, vintage or vintage inspired, and I'm really interested to know which watch he has chosen.
Hey everyone, Norm here from Killing Time with Norman. James, why you gotta ask such impossible questions? What is the most important watch in my collection in 2024? Like singular? I mean, I have two watches that are actually vying for the #1 slot. They're absolutely neck and neck. And then I have a few others that are fighting for 1.5, somewhere around there, just below. But it's fine. I'm down for a challenge. So the watch that I was going to choose for this was my vintage Tudor. This guy right here. This is the cleanest vintage watch I think I've ever seen, besides James's Rado, of course. And I purchased it from a really close friend of mine. And when I bought it, it has a screwed down crown and those threads were kind of worn out. So I sent it off to my watchmaker and it now has a brand new screwed down crown. And the movement inside it is in such great shape and it's so clean that my watchmaker was really impressed by that. So I feel really comfortable wearing this watch a lot, and so I do. Even more so than my other #1 watch in my collection. However, recent events kind of forced my hand, and I would have to say that the most important watch in my collection is definitely my pole router. Since Universal Genève is being resurrected from the dead, now the prices of vintage pole routers are already going up, which is sad. Up until this point, they kind of flew under the radar and had a very steady price to them, but they're starting to rise because if we do get more pole routers in the future, they're going to be at the luxury price point. And I'm really thankful that I was able to get this watch before all of this happened. So a good friend of mine found the watch on Chrono24, and my wife paid for part of it as a Christmas and birthday present, so I was able to get this watch. And the pull router is my absolute favorite watch design. Everything from that amazing silver band around the edge of the dial to the crosshairs, the hands, the lugs, on this particular piece, the crystal, just everything about it is absolutely my personal style. I mean, yeah. And James, thanks for letting me be a part of this video.
This is obviously a very difficult question to ask, which is why people are struggling to answer it. So it was not surprising to me that Norman has featured a couple of watches in his answer. I did think it would be the Tudor. That Tudor in particular is something that I really like, and it's a watch that actually influenced me too, because when I saw him feature that Tudor, it put me on a journey that led me to my Rado vintage watch. Now, earlier I featured Mark from Long Island Watch. He is known as one of the nicest guys in the watch collecting community and the watch world as a whole. And if Mark is the #1 nice guy in the watch world, well, Chris from Merley on Time has to be a close second. And because he is so nice, I thought I would make this even a little bit more difficult for him by not just asking him what is his most important watch in his collection and why, but I thought I also might throw in there a second question of, also, what is your most worn watch this year?
Hey friends, Chris from Merley on Time, Watch Reviews. Thank you to James for inviting me to be a part of this video. Questions that were asked are, what is the most important watch in your collection and what is the most worn watch in your collection in 2024? So the most important watch in my collection, this might be a surprise, is this 1986 Remex digital watch with Wayne Gretzky on the dial. This one was issued in 1986 when I was 10 years old and given to me on Christmas Day by my parents when I was 10 years old. And it is the most important watch in my collection because it is the first watch, at least in living memory, that I have ever owned, and the watch that caused me to fall in love with watches. And for that reason, it will always be in my collection. So thrilled to be able to purchase this watch from a fellow Canadian out in Newfoundland who had it. I bought it on eBay. Now the most worn watch in my collection in 2024, same as the most worn watch in 2023. Ever since I purchased this is the C63 Sealander. It's my most worn watch. The first watch that I spent north of $1,000 on. It's the most expensive watch in my collection. First entry level luxury timepiece that I have purchased. And it is absolutely gorgeous. Because I've spent so much money on it, it definitely deserves the wrist time. But beyond that, it is absolutely gorgeous. The beautiful white lacquer dial, shimmery indices and light catcher case on this. This is a gorgeous watch. Perfect go anywhere, do anything at 150 meters of water resistance as well. Absolutely love Christopher Ward watches, and this will be the most worn watch, at least in the foreseeable future as well. So thank you to James again for inviting me to be a part of this video. God bless you guys.
Now, I did think he would pick that Christopher Ward. It is an incredible everyday watch, and it is such a lovely watch. I love my Christopher Ward, and I know he loves his. But what was nice to see is that he chose that reminiscent sort of watch from his childhood, something that he repurchased for himself, and that emotional connection that he has with this idea of that watch. And you may notice that emotion is a theme in this video and with the answers to this question. And there's definitely an emotional connection for my next guest, Sophie. Sophie, however, is often not too emotional on her channel or on her Instagram feed. What she's known for, or at least what I know her for, is just being so fun and happy and just likes to play with the idea of watch enthusiasm. So you definitely should be checking her out on her YouTube channel, but probably more even on her Instagram. I laugh a lot whenever I see her post. So Sophie, let me see what your answer to this question is.
Hello, hi, Sophie here. So I want to talk to you about my most special watch in my collection, which is what I call the Baltic Mr. Roulette, but I know it's the MR Roulette. This watch is special to me because the watch fam bought it for me. I had my watch collection, well, not all of them, but the majority of my watch collection stolen this summer while I was on holiday, but in my house. And yeah, the watch fam rallied around without me knowing, and they bought me this beautiful, beautiful watch. It makes me feel emotional thinking about it. At the time, I didn't know if insurance would pay out. I didn't know, because I was on holiday still, I didn't know what was taken. I didn't know anything. It was just a horrible time. And when I found out that a lot of my friends had clubbed together to buy me this watch just to make me smile, God, it just was such a beautiful thing. And yeah, it just gave me that faith that there were some really great humans out there. And yeah, that's why this is my most special watch in my collection, and it always will be. It helps that it's extremely beautiful from every angle, a joy to wear. It's a micro brand that I had my eye on and I didn't have, Baltic. They do some fantastic watches. And that's it. So I just want to say a huge thank you again to all those beautiful people who contributed to this watch. I really appreciate it. And yeah, it's something I'll never forget. But anyway, thanks James for asking me to do this, and I'll say bye.
I struggle to even imagine how she felt when she found out some of her watches were gone. It would have been awful. But to have the community then surround her, support her, and gift her a watch, especially a micro brand watch, to sort of fill a little bit of that gap, or pretty much say that we're here for you, we're here to support you. It's a rather amazing story. And I mentioned micro brand because I think micro brands hold a special spot for a lot of us in the watch world. And it is nice when they become part of our stories or part of our adventures, just like the watch that's coming up next.
My acquaintance and fellow YouTuber Watching James reached out to me recently and asked me to contribute around the subject, what is the most important watch in your collection and why? A slightly controversial question that would have most of us watch collectors go in a tailspin and likely be most outraged at the very insinuation of choosing a favorite child. For me, as an avid traveler, my watches are often associated with a trip to somewhere in the world, and I like looking down on my wrist and remembering where I was and what I was doing with it. So whilst I have several watches that I would scramble to save in a fire, one such important watch is the Truska Venturer that I wore when I hiked up to Everest Base Camp in Nepal with my youngest son, who happened to be wearing a matching one in green. This was an incredible journey up to 5,364 meters above sea level that was challenging, fun, and unbelievably beautiful. I've taken both of my sons to Nepal as a bit of a rite of passage, and these are memories that none of us could ever forget. Quite useful with this watch is the plain caseback that my friend Chris engraved for us with the Nepal flag, a rough outline of Everest, and a date we made it to base camp. When I look down on this watch on my wrist, I remember doing exactly that on the journey, and then looking up to either seeing the back of my son ahead of me hiking up a hill, or checking out the time in my dark sleeping bag continuously since it's so hard to sleep at altitude. I remember the trepidation I felt when leaving Lukla to start hiking, the obligatory LGH, lemon, ginger and honey tea, and trying to stay warm crowded around the one wood heater in use in the evenings. It takes me right back to one of the most beautiful and striking locations in the world, and an incredibly special time with my son, Sam.
Every time I watch his videos, two things happen. Firstly, I think, ooh, I love that watch. Maybe I should be putting that one on my personal watch wish list. But secondly, I watch his videos and think, they are so much better than mine. I really need to up my game in my video content and make it somewhat as good as his, or at least try to be as good as his videos. But last on this list, but certainly not least on this list, is a really interesting creator, somebody who I really enjoy following and watching his videos too. And I'm really quite interested to know, specifically from his collecting style, is what he's going to choose.
Hi, this is Andres from Asian Timepieces. So I've been tempted to show this watch as my most important watch because this is for sure one that caught my attention the most at the beginning of my watch collecting journey. Well, at least the movement inside. I was shocked about how can you get a movement that beautiful for a very low price. In fact, I already have 2 more watches with this movement. Just take a look. Okay, let's move to the one that I can consider the most important. In line of what I said before, it's been picked because this one is what really made a change on me about watch collecting and watch reviewing. I remember the YouTube reviews and posting forums about this watch, and I think it made a long way for St. Martin and Asian watches to be more recognizable for the general public, and related to this, I want to congratulate Mark from Islander Watches for stepping up this game carrying St. Martin in his store. It's really going to be a win-win strategy for both parts and a great advantage for customers, especially the US-based ones. Okay, so the summary is that this watch represents the same as my channel. It shows that you can get a high value for the price watches, and you no longer need to focus only in Seiko and entry-level Swiss watches anymore. Cheers!
Oh, Andres, why did you have to choose that watch? I had one of the early versions of that particular model as well with the black dial, and at the time it was one of my favorite watches of all time. I did eventually end up selling it, but now seeing yours, I now think I should maybe rebuy it. Well, I struggle when I watch content, even when there are responses with my own videos, because it makes me want certain watches. But I think it's now time that I now circle back to me and ask myself this difficult question. And it is actually a much more difficult question than I first thought. So I apologize for everybody who was featured that I asked this question. It is a difficult question to ask because initially I thought perhaps it was my father's Seiko, his vintage Aussie Pogue, because I had that real emotional connection to it. There is a story behind it and I love having it in my collection. But then I thought perhaps it was going to be my Hamilton Jazzmaster Travel to GMT because it's, well, my favorite watch, but also it's an important watch to me because it was a bit of a transition for me. It taught me so many lessons about myself and my watch collecting and what I like and what I dislike that it changed the future purchases for me. But there's one watch in my collection that has 3 separate reasons why I think it is my most important watch. And when I add the 3 together, well, then I think that's the reason why it has become the most important, and it is my Longines Hydro Conquest. And the first reason why it is the most important is actually very similar to Parker. That idea of a watch for a milestone that other people have put in for. For my 40th birthday, I decided that I wanted one nice watch in my collection. I wanted something that was a little bit better, something that's a little bit special, and all my family and my friends financially put in for it, and that was my one present for my 40th birthday. And that is the first reason why it is such an important watch in my collection, but it was the journey towards getting this watch. The second reason why it is the most important. There's probably the standout amongst these 3, and that's saying something because wait for the third reason, but it is a standout because I knew I was going to buy this one nice watch. I knew I was going to spend a reasonable amount of money, much more than I'd ever spent before, so I wanted to buy the correct watch because at the time it was going to be my one nice watch. Yes, I know, I laugh at myself too, but because it was going to be the most expensive and the one nice watch in my collection, I did want to choose the correct one. So I did that by doing a lot of research, watching a lot of YouTube videos and reviews, trying to look at different watches to choose the right one. And that journey, that almost year-long journey of trying to pick the right watch, led me to something else. It led me to the watch community as a whole, which I didn't really know existed at that time. It led me to these reviews and these channels that are on YouTube, which up until that point I was more treating them as product reviews. But as I was watching those reviews, I found that they were entertaining. I then started subscribing. I then started watching their watch content. And that journey of buying this watch, that journey of researching this watch, actually ended up leading me to channels like Jody at Just One More Watch, and then led me to the idea that I could start my own channel. If it wasn't for me purchasing this watch and that journey, I don't think I would have this channel. And thirdly, and don't tell my wife, but this is probably one of the lower reasons why it's an important watch, but it is still a very big reason that it's an important watch, is because it's the watch that I wore when I got married. That does make it important and probably puts the other 2 into perspective a little bit. But what I want to ask now is, what is the most important watch in your collection? And why is it the most important watch in your collection? Please put it down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for everybody for participating in this particular video. And after seeing this, leaving that comment, maybe you'd like to watch a couple more of my videos.